Hello, everyone. I'm Richard. Imran and his amazing partner came to dinner 2 years ago to my home. Today, you're all going to come to my home. The home that, wow, totally changed my life, as Imran said. Accidentally became a brand. Accidentally became much, much more than a brand in the last year and a half. So I need to give you a little bit of background about me first. Let's see if this works. Oh, there's me and my dog. Here we are. Okay, I grew up in very rural Australia. This is my mom here in the short shorts. My parents are beekeepers and sugarcane farmers and other stuff. And I included this slide of my mom because my most visceral memory of my mom is putting this little hat on, her little shorts, and going up every day to Roundup. Do you guys know what Roundup is? It's this wretched chemical that's still used across the world for some unknown reason. My dad promised me that the Roundup was safe. He said that the Roundup salesman would come to the farm and would say, like, all that press about Roundup causing cancer is not true. In fact, the salesman would come and would pour Roundup into a glass and drink it to prove to my parents that it was safe. That man is no longer with us, unfortunately. In any case, that was sort of the childhood I lived in until I was 17. And then, God, like many of you, I ran as fast as I could away from my childhood. I came to London, I went to New York. All I wanted to do was to work in fashion. All I wanted to do was work in luxury goods and create stories and make believe, because I felt like the real world was so boring. The childhood I grew up with was so dull. And I wanted the jazz hands, and I wanted the color, and I wanted all that stuff. And got to work with many of the brands that you know, and some people that are here that I've seen again. I said to the team for 16 years, I started the agency when I was, how old was I? 27. And that agency, oh my God, it inhaled my 20s, all my 30s, into my 40s. And I said to everyone through that time that what we were doing was fighting for fantasy. Again, the real world was kind of dull. We wanted to have color, we wanted to have make-believe, we wanted to have mischief. And by the time I met Imran, we had 3 offices. We had dozens and dozens of staff. And importantly, I had a bookshop in Los Angeles. And the bookshop, there's no bookshops in Los Angeles, and it's like the center of the world's imagination. You know, it's Hollywood, which seems strange. So we had a bookshop that was dedicated to design and to architecture. And I was here on the weekend when I picked up the newspaper, and I heard about COVID. And I'm sorry. Thank you very much. When I heard about COVID. And I know there's many of you here who own businesses. Holy God, it was such a crazy time. I was so terrified of everything that I had worked so hard for disappearing so quickly. And like many of you, even though the agency bounced back in the end, thanks to some really talented people, we were really scared. You know, we couldn't afford to pay our rent in our office in New York. We lost our beautiful office. We had to let my friends go, these people I'd worked with for 16 years. It was a really, really difficult time. Before that, though, I had found this house in Los Angeles. So let me tell you for a moment how I found this house. I'm a beekeeper, and like my mom and dad. And so every time we did a photo shoot, I would bring jars of honey to everyone. Honey is the traditional Roman welcome gift. And so if you're on a shoot with me, if you're the model or the photographer, anyone, I would give you a jar of honey. So one day, this person came up to me on set, and she's like, oh my God, you're a beekeeper. I have this neighbor in Los Angeles. He has a 7-acre garden in the middle of the city, which is wild. And he's a hoarder. He's 94 years old. He never comes out. He never goes in. And his partner of 65 years just died. And they loved the garden. Could you bring some bees over? So I was like, okay. So I go over. This man comes to the gate, and he's like hunched over with a walking stick. He's wearing a red silk bathrobe and a leopard print G-string. And kind of looks up at me and says something like rotten, super rotten and dirty. I was like, I see you, dirty old man. I can totally keep up with you. And Dirty John and I sort of just became friends. And every time I came to Los Angeles for many years, I'd come to see the garden, this crazy garden, this amazing garden. And one day we're walking up the steps. It's on a slope. And I said, John, like, you're so old. You should sell this house to someone who will restore it. And he said, Richard, why don't you restore it? And I said, oh, no, I could never do that. I hate Los Angeles. I don't know how to drive, which is not convenient in that city. And also, I just couldn't afford it. I have a business and have a payroll. And he said, Richard, how much can you afford? And so I kind of threw this number out, sort of like the cost of a good watch. And he said, okay, you've been very good to me and you love the garden. If you promise to restore it, and you promise not to sell it, I'll sell it to you for that much. But you also have to promise you can't see inside the house before you buy it. And I'd never seen inside the house. And it turns out that was because when we finally get inside the house, we find hundreds of thousands of canisters of film. These ones here. All of it porn they filmed in the house from the 50s through to the 80s. So this property was like this wild porn studio, so much sex on this property. And the sex is super easy to joke about, but what it also was sort of this hedonistic playground. It was a place of lots of sex, lots of artists, lots of chefs, lots and lots of vegetables and fruit and music. And as I sort of dug into it, he was a hoarder, remember, so he threw nothing away. So all this stuff was there. And sort of really understood, like, oh, this man who I felt so sorry for in his red silk bathrobe and leopard print G-string all the time wasn't sad or lonely at all. He had this amazing life that was full of pleasure. So my mom and dad came. We started restoring the garden. We planted about 700 trees. And with the help of lots and lots of other very talented people, kind of just like brought new life back into this beautiful property. And then I personally, having worked, like many of you, very hard for so long, I did a couple of things. I started eating a lot better. I started growing vegetables, harvesting honey. One very important detail, the water from the house runs into the garden. And so I was like, well, I was using hand soap, a famous hand soap brand you probably all know and love. And I noticed that my roses were turning brown. So I was like, well, why would I use that on my hands if I can't use it on my plants? So we started making soap and we started making other stuff from the garden. And then, okay, here's where it gets crazy. So after Imran was there, Jeff, my colleague, says there's a farmer just outside Los Angeles who's going to lose her farm. And all the restaurants are closed, remember? And I said, no, let's not let that happen. Tell her to bring her vegetables to my bookstore, the one I told you about earlier. Let's get rid of the books. The bookstore had closed. I said, let's get rid of the books and we'll sell vegetables. And so I think she thought we could sell about a dozen boxes of vegetables. That first Friday, we sold 300 boxes. The second Friday, we sold 600 boxes. Today is delivery day in Los Angeles. We have 35 trucks. We have delivered to 150,000 homes. I know, which is wild, right? And so what happened very quickly was other people started joining us. This amazing mushroom farmer, we were talking about mushrooms yesterday, said, could you sell my mushrooms? I said, yes. Flower farmer in San Diego said, can you, all these regenerative farmers, I should say, said, can you sell my flowers? I said, yes. Citrus farmer, yes. So more farmers did. One farm became 2 farms, became 10 farms. Today we have 75 farms in the network. And the other thing we started to do was we started to put recipes in the boxes. And obviously the restaurants were closed, so all the chefs that we knew were out of work, so they would come to the house, we'd make videos, and we'd give recipes. So we sort of started to bring our creative friends back into the property. So here's what I learned in that period, was that these people were the most talented people, the most creative people on earth. I'd worked in advertising my whole life, but these people taught me that mushrooms are great for anxiety, that raspberries are great for sperm health and reproductive health, that mugwort is good for sleeping. I also saw that the farmer's market model is outdated for these people, that traditional wholesale for regenerative farmers doesn't really work. And that these people had no idea how to market themselves. They didn't have Instagram accounts, they barely had Facebook pages. Some of them answered an email once a week. And so we started helping them. As I said, the agency had kind of fallen into freefall. And so my team, who are amazing but kind of snotty, they were like, I said, guys, I know you just want to work on Hermès, but now you're in charge of mushrooms, and you're in charge of citrus, and you're in charge of tomatoes, go. And I challenged them to just like think about the garden as a luxury good, and they did. Another funny, I mean, we kind of just like went into problem-solving mode. Connor, my colleague here, reminded me that top photo. This time a year ago, we had thousands and thousands and thousands of Christmas orders. And I wanted everything to be tied up in a beautiful bow, like a Tiffany bow. And we had like every skater dude in Los Angeles trying to tie bows. Every out-of-work barman was trying to tie bows. Like we had this huge team of people. And one of our colleagues tapped me on the shoulder and he's like, Richard, you know, the restaurants are not the only thing that are closed. The dungeons are closed as well. And if you need someone to tie a bow or a knot, there's a lot of dominatrix out of work. So in comes in some people I don't think have ever seen sunlight, who could tie a bow in 3 seconds flat and get it out the door and perfect. So this Christmas, they're back at work. Apparently the dungeons are open again, so if anyone knows, you know, a good dominatrix in Los Angeles, let me know. Anyway, all this to say, lots of other creative people came. My friends who were photographers were not working, they were not traveling, so they came and I said, please come photograph the garden, and artists came to the garden, and as I said, chefs came and musicians came, and I said, just like think about Mother Nature as your muse until the pandemic is over. So we got into problem-solving mode. Kind of halfway through COVID, this really handsome young farmer, Martin, came down to the house and he said, Richard, I think I have the best olives in all of America. They're grown at the perfect altitude and the perfect soil. Can we make some olive oil? I was like, okay, sure. How hard can that be? So we made olive oil. We made vinegar. Same sort of story. Someone said, I've got acres and acres of grapes. Let's make wine. Okay, how hard can that be? Let's make wine. A 10th generation tea farmer in Kyoto. It's like, I've got a regenerative tea farm. Can we make tea? Let's make some Earl Grey tea with bergamot from the Italian coast. So we did that. Manuka honey infused with royal queen bee jelly from Australia. A saffron honey from Northern California. Saffron's such a treasure from nature, I'm sure many of you know. Soap. We make so much soap. This soap here in the bottom left is made with indigo from Japan. There used to be 1,800 indigo farmers in Japan. Today there's only 4 regenerative farmers. And the oil from that soap comes from 300-year-old cypress trees grown in Japan from a UNESCO heritage site. It's not, obviously they're not cut down, it's from like fallen branches and old tree stumps and stuff like that that we harvest. So really like thinking about how we can, outside the kitchen, bring Mother Nature in. Did the same for body wash and hand soap and all sorts of stuff for the bath. Did the same thing with camellia oil and other oils, so body oil and a sex tonic, obviously, because we have a porn history. And lots of tinctures and tonics and stuff for sleep and anxiety and all that sort of stuff. Oh, and candles. We make so many candles, and I know I'm running short of time, so I won't talk too much about the candles. Just to say, Oprah made us her favorite thing, the candles, 3 weeks ago. We used to kind of sell a couple of candles a week. We've sold 2,500 candles an hour since Oprah said that she liked our rosemary candle, or tomato candle, which was lovely. Thanks, Oprah. Anyway, all said, we've made about 150 products. And I shared these in 18 months. And I share these numbers with you, not to brag, honestly. Just to say this is not a hobby anymore. We did about $6 million this year. We already have about 10 million committed next year for wholesale. Most of that money obviously goes back to the farms. We've planted 150,000 trees with the National Forest Foundation, and obviously continue to bring more farms into the network. Finally, I really wanted this place to be a touch point for inspiration from the green world. I went to a publisher about a year ago. I said I want to do a gardening book. They kind of put me with old lady gardening books or David Attenborough, and I was like, no. There's lots of people with green thumbs and middle fingers who care about the environment. So I couldn't get a publisher, so we just published them ourselves. So we just released a series of books from my heroes, like Jane Goodall. Michael Pollan has a great book, How to Change Your Mind, about magic mushrooms, which seems to be the theme of this week. Terry Tempest Williams, a lot of people I love and adore. And today, we launch our cookbook, which is all those recipes I talked about earlier that we're putting in the boxes, about 500 pages. Martha Stewart kindly wrote the introduction. So that comes out today. And all that to say, spending my whole career trying to get excited about make-believe and luxury goods. It's funny that the thing that I love the most is right under my nose the whole time. Mother Nature is our doctor, therapist, and friend. And these are the greatest gifts from the world and the most precious things. And you remember in the beginning I said we would fight for fantasy. I want to just finish by saying this photo is a farm in Ojai. We pull citrus from the neighboring farm. And this farm is on contract with a big American agriculture company. They make orange juice. They get paid 1/5 of our farm. They use pesticides because they have to, because they're not paid enough. So my dream is that we can make enough hand soap, we can make enough marmalade, that we'd get this farm, and we'd get another farm, and maybe in 10 years' time we don't work with 75 farms, we have 7,500 farms, and they're all working without pesticides and chemicals, and that, to me, really would be a fantasy that is worth fighting for. So thank you very much.